So we got a patch and a Tarkov TV podcast all in one day. And I was dead wrong in assuming we were going to get something huge or some new content out of it. So if I led you along with that, I apologize, kinda. But if you believe a guy wearing a hat like I was wearing, that's probably your fault. Now, a lot of folks are voicing their opinions, or at least they're talking about how they feel like this was a letdown. The podcast was dumb. There's nothing out of it. The patch is pointless, all this other stuff. And I couldn't disagree more. No, we didn't get LightKeeper or any new guns or anything like that, but we got a ton of information out of this podcast that kind of shows us where BSG's at and where it's going and how many big changes are actually coming this year. And on top of that, the patch fixed a ton of bugs. And it seems like it doesn't matter what happens. If BSG releases new content, people bitch about them not fixing bugs or hackers or whatever. And if they do something that doesn't have any new content, but it fixes bugs and addresses issues in the game, then they bitch that there was no new content. So it's a no-win situation for BSG when it comes to that kind of stuff. And besides, it kind of looks more like today's podcast. In Nikita's mind was more of a Q&A session. He wanted to answer the community's questions. He had asked about that. He had mentioned that's what he was going to do. So I think that's kind of where people got skewed, is Nikita wanted to do a podcast and do Q&A, and everybody else thought this was going to be some big announcement. So what's the TLDR of the podcast? Well, the big points are, at least the biggest one I thought is that they're getting rid of Steam Audio. But they're also talking about how close Streets is, very close. We got new hideout areas or modules coming, however you want to phrase it. And then armor and weapon repair kits are going to apply buffs to guns, which, boy, did that send the community into a whirlwind for a little bit. And then with the patch, there was a ton of kind of bug fixes, kind of obscure bugs, things most people don't run into. But we got some new sound surfaces in game. Sound surfaces. We got some new sounds for different surfaces in games. Airplanes are quite a bit quieter. Looks like the dolphin dive thing is patched out, which is good. Mip Streaming's been re-enabled. And then some other quality of life stuff we'll get into more specifics there. So in more detail, let's talk about what I thought the biggest thing in the podcast was, and that was the Nikita saying that they're going to go a different direction than Steam Audio. They're replacing it, getting rid of it, shit canning it, however you want to call it. Now, BSG has prioritized working on the audio in Tarkov since the beginning of the year, but we haven't seen any progress. There's been no updates to it. They haven't talked about it, and we haven't seen anything in the game. And today's news kind of hints at why. I would have to say that because they've probably been trying for a couple of months to figure out how to get Steam Audio to work, to fix it with their current system, and it doesn't look like that's going to be possible. So they're going to step back, come up with a different system, and what that is, it's hard to say. Now, keep in mind that some of the worst audio bugs in Tarkov are not a product of Steam Audio either. They're a part of how BSG designed the sound to work in the game with occlusion zones and things, and how those interact with each other or don't interact and things like that. Now, he did touch on it again towards the end of the podcast, and like it says, it makes it sound like they're going to a whole completely different system, but it's supposed to be this year. So I'm fingers crossed that we're going to see some big improvements in audio soon and see where that goes. Now, as far as LightKeeper, we got almost nothing new out of Nikita, and that is by design from him. He doesn't want to spoil anything. He wants us to surprise us. He wants us to learn about it in the game and not get spoilers for it, if you will. The only indication that we really got was that it is a huge impact on the game itself. Everything's going to change around it because of how you interact with a trader. There's tons of balance issues, technical stuff with interactions. All of that kind of stuff just led to it being longer to get out than I think they wanted to with 12/30. But again, when? We don't know. Sometime in the next 4 months, he said this year. I think it's sooner than that. If I had to throw it at a dartboard and pick a date, I would say probably sometime in October. But I think we're subject to the whims of the development team, not any kind of date at this point. But along with this, we got the most info on Streets that we've gotten in quite a long while, and a ton of screenshots. And Nikita also confirmed a couple of things about Streets. The map is definitely intended for 40 players, at least this first iteration of it. Though he does admit that it's probably going to be about 20 people, because right now it seems like their biggest hurdle is frames and playability, how well it runs on a medium level machine. Their goal is 60 frames on that with a medium level machine. And it seems like 20 players is going to be the limit when the first iteration gets released. Now, this first iteration is only going to be a piece of Streets. It's not going to be the whole thing. And we don't know, is it going to be like 1/5 of it? Is it going to be half of it? What? We don't know. It's just going to be this one chunk we're going to get. And then they're going to introduce more and more pieces of it in stages, several stages, and add to it and make it bigger and bigger and bigger, hopefully just pushing the limit and getting everything working out right. Now, Nikita also let us know that new areas are going to be coming to the hideout, or modules, I guess. I'm not totally sure exactly what he means by areas. He said there's going to be a gym with the ability to increase your strength. I honestly think this is a troll, and maybe it's just because I'm being cynical, but I don't understand how this would work. Not with the way the game is designed, not with everything we've had so far. Having a gym that makes you level up strength just doesn't make sense to me, but I could be completely wrong. I'm just putting that out there now. I think Nikita's trolling us. Again, I could be completely wrong. We'll see though. But for other modules, the only thing that's really been mentioned, I think, is a bigger shooting range, or some kind of system in the shooting range that's going to let us shoot further and test longer range optics and things like that. Versus, I think, what do we have, 50 meters in the range right now, and that's as far as you go. So that'll be something we'll be anxiously looking to see what else we're going to get in our hideout. Now, the weapon and armor buff. This one I'm laughing at a little because folks absolutely freaked the hell out over this and spooled up like I haven't seen in a while. And we have no idea what the state of these and final enhancements are going to be. They showed it on the stream. Basically, if you repair a gun, you can get these bonus buffs. Things like less of a chance of malfunction and smaller dispersion, which is how much the bullet spreads out when it shoots. And then armor showed a reduction in damage. Now, do you really think that BSG is going to put a random roll of a dice on a gun that makes it recoil or its dispersion 20% less just because it got repaired? I don't think that. Do you also think BSG is going to reduce how much damage you take in raid, again, because of some random magic buff on armor? No, I don't think that either. So I think folks just need to chill out. Let's wait and see what BSG is bringing with this, and we can see it then. And then if it's broken, we can give them suggestions on how to make it better, not just bitch and say, this is a horrible, awful idea. Now, for other new content, what we did get shown is the AUG and the SR2 Verisk, which the SR2 Verisk, I was thinking it's going to be this, but it's going to be a monster, I think. They showed a clip of it with suppressor on there and full autoing. It kind of gives me feelings of the old Asval, not when it was super broken and before they nerfed it, but like halfway through the nerfs when they went on that string of nerfs with like 5 nerfs of the Val. Right in the middle of that is where this Verisk looks. And with the ammo it shoots, it's going to be deadly. Now, I'm buying up tons of 9x21 BT off of Proper right now to use it when that eventually releases, because I think that's sooner than later. The AUG, on the other hand, it kind of looks rough. Now, keep in mind, he only point fired it. It didn't look like there was any mods on it or any attachments. And IRL, from what I've heard, the AUG shoots pretty rough anyways. So we'll just have to wait and see where it falls into this meta of guns. It might just be like the G36 is now, and it's not really an effective full auto weapon. One good piece of news we got, though, is that the more advanced hitbox are being worked on, but that whole line of advanced hitbox and custom rigs and features has been separated. And unfortunately, the custom rigs and features has been frozen for now, per Nikita's words, which means they're not working on it. They've just got too much stuff going on. But the custom hitboxes are, and that's in this category of stuff that they want before the end of the year. Now, what does this mean exactly as far as more hitboxes? It kind of means like you have side weak points on armor where the armor's not covering. Or places like if you have armor like some of the higher end tier 5s and 6s that cover part of your arm, it only covers the upper part, but the whole hitbox is counted if you get shot there. That stuff is kind of where I think it's going, but we'll have to wait and see. Tarkov's hitboxes right now are kind of cruddy, to say the least. So adding more complexity to that system can go one way or the other. It can make things better or worse. Now, as far as getting rid of the custom rigs, as much as it sucks that that's going, I also think this is a sign of a good thing at how Nikita and BSG are starting to do stuff, because it shows they're cutting back on feature creep. So instead of constantly adding new features and new stuff into the game, and that has to be programmed in and customized and adding all of these different variables, they're cutting stuff out. And that leads me to believe that they're getting closer and closer to this end state of the game. They want to finish it. And if they just forever add new features, the game will never be done. So in that aspect, I think it's a good thing. We'll just kind of have to see if we end up getting it later on, maybe after 1.0, or once they get some of these features ironed out. And then another big one that I didn't think was going to be coming anytime soon, but it looks like it is the unconscious state. And it's more complicated than we've heard in the past. It's not just going to be about knocking people out. There's also like an in-between mode, essentially. Like if somebody's running and you shoot them in the leg, they'll fall down. They're not unconscious, but they're immobilized for a second or a little bit or a period of time. And just how that plays out in the game is going to be interesting, especially with stuff like pre-medding. You know, if you're pre-medded or not and you get shot in the leg when you're sprinting and you fall over, kind of changes how you move around a map a lot. But then going on to the further part where you get further incapacitated, as Nikita put it, if you'll be able to do anything you want with the body, which, oh boy, God help us. The trolling and bullshit that's going to come out of that, if that's how it's going to be. Oh, wow. But all of that requires a ton of work with animations, interactions, how two players interact with each other. I mean, right now, the most complicated thing is you walk up and hit Y and you wave at them and it says your name. Like, that's the most complicated player interaction we have right now. So again, that's on the list for this year, but it's not something I'm going to hold my breath on. We'll see. Maybe the team will pull through and get it done, but in my mind, it's kind of back burner as far as stuff I'm worried about. Now, a few side things Nikita mentioned in passing or answering questions is there's not going to be any bows or crossbows or anything like that, or nothing like the M1 Grand. And yeah, it sounds like even the ACR got the axe. This boils down to the idea that stuff you need to be able to find in theater or in this imaginary world they've created. You know, an M1 Grand is going to be something that's a collector item. You're not going to have people walking around with it. And that whole discussion and argument, you could look at a lot of guns in the game and freak out over that. So I don't want to get into it too much. That's just what Nikita said. He also touched on the MCX possibly getting a buff, Killa getting his own voice lines, and then just in passing mentioned that volumetric fog is being added. Now, that could be a good or a bad thing. It could require more processing. I don't know how much about it. It makes the game look better, but it sounds like it has a heavier hit on the ability to process what you're looking at. With that, we also got a new Glock animation. It's not a real big deal overall. It was kind of cool to see. The press check was pretty badass. This nice little touch shows that the team is constantly working to update and refresh even old stuff in the game. And I think that's a good thing. And then before we get to the patch, the last thing that I think is really cool is Nikita. He really likes the co-op mode and what's come out of it. And it feels like it's going to get more love. He's talking about more tools, features, things like that, just because he's enjoyed seeing what the community's done with it so far, and he really wants to expand on that.
Offline co-op options, yes. There is a lot of things planned for the offline co-op, and I really... Ты выиграл? Красавчик. I really love when the streamers or content makers make some unique events within the co-op mode. Like, it's so fun to watch. Like, I'd love to see more of these videos or like streamer events when they try to, you know, like storm the lighthouse or like protect the left wing of the resort. Like, it's always so fun to watch, and I hope the amount of these events will be more events of this, and hopefully we'll have more additional tools and everything within the co-op mode to have the ability to make it more like something like show or something, like to make it more interesting to watch.
And with that hopefully it means that it isn't required for EOD, but we'll see. Now, as for the patch, it's mostly bug fixes. The big ones being they patched out the dolphin dive. You can no longer ensure flares. The foliage glare with SSR in the rain is fixed. I haven't verified that myself. I know what they're talking about. I had it. So they said it's fixed, so hopefully it is. It's another patch notes about fixing not being able to loot airdrops, though I've seen people saying they still can't or they're still having issues. So this may turn into something like the flashlight shining through walls issue they have, that we see 4 or 5 iterations of them trying to fix it and it's still not fixed. So just have patience, keep submitting bug reports if it makes sense, and hopefully they can track out all the different problems that are causing this. And I'll throw a link down into the description as well for all the patch notes, so you can go look at them in detail for yourself if you want, because I'm not going to go through every line here. One of the big ones that I noticed right away playing today is they changed surface sounds. And I noticed this in dorms, and it was honestly weird. Not bad weird, not good weird, just it was so different. I'm so used to the sounds in dorms for the years. It's where I've spent most of, like, if you look at one small location in any place of the map, dorms is where I've spent most of my time. So just keep that in mind. Airplanes are also turned down a little bit. They're still just as loud when they first show up, but they don't hit that crazy peak that causes physical pain. Like, I got to where I would just take my headset off in game, like off my character, and actually turn my game volume down until they flew over. So it's not that bad, which is great. It's nice. It's super nice. And another quality of life feature they added was the little yellow check for task items. You know, you have a task item you got to get and it puts a little check. But let's say you've got to get like for like the farming task or whatever it is, the mechanic where you got to get wires and capacitors, 4 of each. Well, if you got all your wires and you were still looking for capacitors, it still showed a yellow check mark on the wires. Doesn't do that anymore. Once you turn them in and everything's good on that item that you need, it disappears, the yellow check mark. So the only stuff shows up is stuff that you still need. Small change, but a nice one to have. And the one I don't know a whole lot about because I don't use it, but Mip Streaming has also been turned back on and reworked. Looking through it, I suggest you look more at yourself. Don't trust me. Like I said, I don't know what I'm really talking about, but near as I can gather, if you have a slow hard drive, like an old school hard drive that Tarkov's running on, you want the Mip Streaming on a lower value. And if you are on a fast hard drive or an SSD, you want that on a higher value. But aside from that, check it yourself, play around with it, see if it works for you. But with that, we'll wrap up the video. Thanks for watching. Wish you the best of luck in your raids. We'll see you in Tarkov.
It's really been a long time, and I'm so glad to see you all in the chat. I know, like we know, everybody knows that BSG loves you, and we are wishing only the best for you, like every time, every single time. So